I love thee,
Jesus, my love above all things.
I repent with my whole heart of having offended thee.
Jerusalem, the holy city, for 2,000 years the crucible of the world's most enduring conflict. That struggle between competing gods and rival nations, which has spilt much blood in this city. The last war here was 10 years ago, and its victors mark this Thursday as Jerusalem Day. Today, 10 years on, Jerusalem is calm, apparently at peace. Its Jews secure in the belief that it is now theirs forever.
We are here now in no man's land. There was no traffic on this road. There was a wall there dividing the two parts of the city.
After 10 years as mayor of all Jerusalem, Teddy KOLLEK exudes that confidence about the city which Israel would wish the rest of the world to share.
Jews are absolutely certain that this is their capital. It was their capital since David made it its capital 3,000 years ago. And even when they were away for 2,000 years, they prayed for this as their capital every day. And once or so during the year, they said next year in Jerusalem, and that meant returning to the old glory and to the old independence. So now it had happened, and now it's ours, and we shan't let it go again.
Do you rejoice 10 years on in its unity, or do you have doubts about it?
I have no doubts about the unity. I think we have problems, but so has Montreal between French and English, so has Washington between white and black, so has certainly Belfast or Beirut, so has even Brussels or South African cities. I think it goes a lot better here. We have a lot of hope.
You don't like eggs.
You don't like eggs.
We don't need sweaters.
The Jews in Jerusalem exhibit no self-doubt. Muriel Jollis, a new immigrant from Lancashire, teaches English to Jewish children in a school which stands on Arab land in East Jerusalem, and it gives her no qualms. The parents and grandparents of these pupils have come to settle in Israel from every continent, to a refuge from persecution, pogrom and Holocaust.
We live in Jerusalem, we don't live in Tel Aviv. Very good.
But this school is an assertion of Jewish right secured by Israeli might. 10 years ago, these children were toddlers, and today they are still innocent of the issues which put them at the dangerous center of the world's most profound conflict. To them and their teacher, it's enough that Jerusalem seems to be one city.
It could be the prophecy coming true, where something comes out of Jerusalem for the good of the world. And I think that a united Jerusalem is something that has to be. Otherwise, it's going to... Jerusalem should be all the cultures together united. And it's got to be united. I mean, 2,000 years, they've always said in the Passover ceremony, Shana Haba Yerushalayim. This is something that next year in Jerusalem. And so it's something very important and vital for the Jewish people. Otherwise, I think the Jews will cease to exist as such.
The fruit of victory 10 years ago was the Western Wall, where the Jewish faith enjoins its followers to bewail the destruction of Solomon's temple, their holy of holies for more than 2,000 years. For 20 years, until 1967, the division of Jerusalem denied access to the wall. In victory, the Jews vowed never to yield the city. The Jewish faith and the Jewish state had at last met together in Zion, and the myth that the Jews had a supreme and inalienable right to the city was realized at last, whatever international opinion or law might say about it. That their nation is built upon the ruins of another is a thought that most Jews do not easily contemplate.
I think that happened in 1967 was definitely an irreversible historic act. It's something that cannot be altered just by force of arms. Of course, like many other things, there's a price for everything. So for this thing, we pay a very heavy price.
In 1967, Meron Ben-Venisti became responsible for the affairs of Arab East Jerusalem. He's uncomfortably aware that order is not peace, that calm is illusion.
The city is torn. You have two ethnic groups living in the same city. 250,000 Jews and 100,000 Arabs. And they are part of the conflict, and this is perhaps the heart of the matter. And they don't see eye to eye the future of the city. The Arabs feel themselves being occupied by the Jews. The Jews feel entitled to have the whole of the city under their own jurisdiction. Therefore, this is a tragic conflict.
If you were an Arab, would you feel yourself to be occupied by Jews?
Definitely, definitely.
It's not common for Israelis to feel that, is it?
Well, you have to ask the Arabs what they feel, and if they feel that they're occupied, they're occupied. This is a subjective matter. You can't tell them, look, you are liberated. Liberation and occupation are things that you have to ask the people what they feel about them. And you have, being an Israeli, and I am an Israeli, stand up with this feeling that 100,000 of my neighbors, my immediate neighbors, feel occupied and feel that I occupy them.
And to occupation, there is a painful and dangerous logic. Its point of departure, that victory for the Jews was defeat for the Arabs, but not final, for the Arabs won't and can't surrender. Jerusalem is as holy for Muslims as it is for Jews, a place of pilgrimage to rival Mecca, sanctified by the Prophet Muhammad's last moment on earth. And for Muslims, like Jews, the affairs of God and state are inextricably interlaced. The territory which contains their holy shrines must be under Muslim jurisdiction. And so while the rock from which Muhammad ascended into heaven remains part of Jewish territory, there can be no peace. The promise of a holy war to recover Jerusalem reflects not Arab rhetoric, but profound Muslim purpose. The authority of the most august religious leader in East Jerusalem is recognized throughout the Arab world. In this court, he adjudicates on all matters concerning marriage, divorce and family settlement. But in this city, his judgments are null and void. His court does not recognize Israel, nor Israel the court. So, to legitimize their affairs in Jerusalem, Arabs must attend an Israeli court. To state your case here, in this legal vacuum, is to tell yourself that one day the enemy occupation will surely end, and your religious court will hold sway once more. Last Sunday, the City Council discussed a master plan for Jerusalem to the year 2000. There was not one Arab in the room. Their boycott of Israeli politics is absolute. For 10 years, the Arabs of Jerusalem have refused to stand for election, to debate or decide the future of their city. To sit here with Jews would be thought an act of collaboration with the enemy. There is some necessary but infrequent contact between the two peoples, but no meeting of minds. The city is run by Jews alone, and so the logic of occupation takes another step forward. The old city enshrines the conflict. Misunderstandings between Arab and Jew proliferate, distrust festers. Small incidents combine with great blunders to drive a lasting wedge between each side. The issue is basic: land and homes.
And this before was owned by, who was living in this house, for instance?
Arab here.
It was an Arab house. How many families were living in there?
Maybe 20 families.
Most of the Jewish quarter of the old city was owned by Arabs, but until their expulsion in 1948 was inhabited by Jews. In victory after 1967, Israel began to evict the Arabs. Now the quarter will house Jews again, and only Jews. The process of eviction in East Jerusalem has been aggressive, an assertion by Jews of their right to a national heritage here.
Do you think the tourists know how you feel?
When tourists admire a Roman wall, which was uncovered through the destruction of his house by Jews, an Arab feels lasting pain. The wound of occupation is deepened. And so the logic presses on. If the parents won't, perhaps the children will acknowledge Israel. But the conflict over Jerusalem is not just between Jew and Arab. It is most profoundly between Israel and Palestine. And so in the flush of conquest, the Jews sought to blur the national identity of the young Arabs, imposing on all Arab schools an Israeli education. In part, they sought to eliminate anti-Semitic teaching. But more than that, they obliterated Palestine from the curriculum, placing Israel in its stead. It didn't work. And children over 12 are now taught according to the Jordanian syllabus. But still Israel seeks to contain the Palestinian spirit. It can't be done.
You see, every article which mention about the Palestine and the people of Palestine, they threw out of the books.
Why is that?
You didn't find in the books something called Palestine or Palestine people.
Why is that, do you think?
I think that they are quarreling or fighting to forget us, our political identity.
Does it work?
I don't think it is work, because we are more and more anxious and called for our political identity.
So Arab children are reared to become people of Palestine, not Israel, inhabiting their own city as strangers under occupation by an enemy power. But the logic is insistent. Israel's security requires Palestinian submission. So if you're an Arab in East Jerusalem, you may not form a political party, hold a rally, join a demonstration, strike, or even close your shop in protest. To assert in public and together, we are Palestinian and you have stolen our land, is to agitate. And agitators can be deported suddenly, and hundreds have been, or detained without charge or trial for days, weeks, months, even years. So Arabs must choose, submit or resist. To submit is to deny your essence, to resist is to court retribution. Arabs in East Jerusalem will not usually talk freely in the open. This garage owner, for instance, will not acknowledge Israel, but dare not defy. To press for the truth causes profound discomfort.
Do you accept that you are now standing in Israel?
I don't think so. What do you mean by that?
Do you believe this to be Israel where you're now standing?
I don't think that will be the permanent situation. It will be too difficult for both sides.
If it were to remain Israel, what would you do?
I can't imagine what I'll do. I can tell you now.
Do you feel free to say exactly what you think?
I feel free to tell you whatever I want, but not now. I don't like it. I don't want to tell.
This 16-year-old boy fears recognition. Arrested more than once for incitement, but never convicted, he claims that to extract confessions, he and many others have been beaten up in jail.
Where did they hit you?
On our back and the head, and I can see in the whole body. And they was by their hands and our face. So if one of us fall over in blood, he said to the police, the blood fall from me. They say, shut your mouth, and they give him another one in the same place.
If the Israeli police arrest you, and if you are punished again, if you are caught, will that stop you in future? Will you say, okay, I don't do it again?
Listen, when they arrest me or something like that, I could say in front of them, I never do something like that. But I'm sure when I got outside and I see something like this in prison, I'm going to do more things.
That boy hid his face from the camera because he was frightened of being arrested again and brought here to the Moscow compound, the detention and interrogation center of the Jerusalem police. Here, it is alleged, over the last 10 years, individuals under interrogation have been subjected to harassment, ill treatment, and torture on a scale which, if the allegations are true, constitutes a persistent and gross violation of human rights.
Jamil Abu Gabieh is one of few prepared to testify in public. Arrested in February 1976 for incitement, he alleges that he was beaten up on the way to prison and that then in the Moscow compound he was tortured. A man brought a stick and started to hit me on the soles of my feet until the stick broke. He got another stick and broke it in the same way. He started to tell jokes, and when I wouldn't laugh, he began to hit me, to punch me. This beating up went on until dawn. By the second day, I was in a terrible state, my face badly swollen. In the evening, they took me to a hospital where they took x-rays and found that my head wasn't fractured. After 9 days, Jamil was freed without charge. A doctor saw him the next day. His certificate supports the allegations. Mohammed Atwan was arrested in May 1974, held for a month without charge, and released with the instruction to return to the Moscow compound on the 2nd of June 1974. He obeyed. His record of that day is as follows. 4 interrogators entered the room. They shouted at me and made fun of me. One of them pulled my hand back and twisted it. Then they began to hit me. Another put his arm around my neck and started hitting me with his other hand. Then they said, "You must help us." I said, "I won't. You can imprison me or execute me, whatever you like." One of them banged his hand on the table, said, "You must serve the state of Israel." He kept pushing me and hitting me in the face. Still, I refused to cooperate. Then they started to hit me on my genitals. Then one of them brought an electric wire and connected one end to the wall and put the other end on my head. They asked me a question which I couldn't answer. When I didn't answer, he started to hit me. Within seconds I fell down, and I don't know whether they used electric shocks or not. Mohammed Atwan has not been charged, tried or sentenced for any offence. Again, the medical evidence supports his allegation. Now he's free, but a sick man. The allegation that torture is persistent and widespread has been made most prominently by a Jewish lawyer, Felicia Lange. A member of the Communist Party, which is committed to the survival of Israel, she is reviled by many fellow Jews as a traitor. What matters is whether she tells the truth.
I want to open the eyes of honest people and of my people. I want to show the other face of my people, because I want to live here and to stay here. I have no other homeland. My eyes are not deceiving me for so many years. It is impossible. Why they are not contesting case by case what I am saying in my books and in my article? Why they are making a silence conspiracy against what I'm writing, what I'm saying in Israel here? Why, if the conscience is so clear and pure, they have to say explicitly, you are lying in Mr. Abu Gharbia case. You are lying in Omar Salama case. Not. They don't dare to say that I lie here because they know that I'm telling the truth. They said truth, but the truth.
Israel remains unmoved. When politicians come to Jerusalem to win votes, the electorate does not embarrass them with uncomfortable questions about the plight of the Arabs in the city. Indeed, the Arabs of East Jerusalem are not a serious issue in the general election, which next Tuesday will decide the new government of Israel. Men like Shimon Peres, who now serves as Prime Minister, find it hard to acknowledge that there is cause for concern.
We as Jewish people, we suffered so much in our history by attempts to liquidate our identity that I do not believe that any reasonable Jewish person will ever try to suppress the identity of any other nation or any other religion. Why? What for?
In East Jerusalem, the Arabs do not have the political rights which the Jews in the west of Israel do have.
They certainly enjoy freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of movement, and they can obviously worship their Lord, to be completely free religiously and completely sincere in their feelings. We don't ask anybody to change his mind or connections.
In East Jerusalem, the Arabs do not have all those rights. And
for example, what don't they have?
The Arabs of East Jerusalem do not have the right to form their own political parties. They don't have the right to express their Palestinian identity.
They
don't have the right to demonstrate.
Well,
they don't have the right to call rallies. All of the things which the Jewish population of Israel is permitted to do.
They can have all those rights in 5 minutes' time, no problem. They were offered Israeli citizenship. The minute they will become, as they have the right to, citizens of this country, they will certainly have all the rights that goes with citizenship. But since they have refused and they are holding their Jordanian passports, I mean, there is a limitation to it, especially, let's face it, in a highly tense situation.
So Jews offer Arabs a threefold choice. They can deny Palestine and embrace Israel, which is inconceivable. They can get out, which is surrender, or they can stay, which almost all of them will, and continue to endure the logic of occupation, the denial of those rights which civilization seeks to preserve for all people. Jews do not care to contemplate this thought, that the basis of their hold on Jerusalem is oppression.
You cannot have a situation in which in one city you have people who have deprived of their rights and other people who have the full rights.
Israel Shahak is a Jew, a professor at the Hebrew University. His father died in the Nazi Holocaust. As a child, he endured 2 years in Belsen. His words are a plea to his own people.
This situation is not only harmful, it is suicidal for the oppressors and the oppressed together, and more to the oppressor. It will destroy us. It is not only, of course, first of all, I care to help the people who suffer. But immediately after this, I say that the government who makes such a position, which is both unjust and also unrealistic, is leading my people to destruction. It is not the first government who does so to its own people.
And you wish Israel to survive?
And I wish the Jewish people in this area of the world to survive. It is first of all the people and then the state. Of course, if the state of Israel will be a just state, it will survive. If it will be not just a just state, it will happen to it exactly what the prophet said about the ancient Jerusalem. It will not survive.
The warning echoes unheard. Instead, on the hills around Jerusalem, on Arab land, the Jews have served notice on the world that the city is theirs forever. The barricade of settlements around East Jerusalem are an assertion, in defiance of world opinion and regardless of international law, that the Jewish state will not readily yield the holy city. French Hill, Neve Yaakov, Gilo and Ramot provide homes for Jews and fortresses for Israel, a diplomatic fait accompli in occupied territory, an aesthetic upheaval which cements the physical and numerical ascendancy of Jew over Arab at the heart of the conflict over the Middle East. It troubles few souls in Israel.
If you talk in terms of war and peace, I don't think that war and peace is going to start because there's a housing project on a hill somewhere in Jerusalem. If you think in terms of war and peace, there is nothing we should do here. Because if this is a very, I would say, a very pessimistic view. If you accept that the Arabs would not recognize, the Jews will not recognize, there is no solution to the question. The only solution is to resort to arms. There is no solution today that will enable the city to continue, except for that the present rulers of Jerusalem will be in control of the city. The only possible way is that we'll build cooperation between the two ethnic groups based on an understanding, and this is hard on us and hard on the Arabs, that we are permanent here. Therefore, we have to leave all options open for peace whenever it will come, and in the meantime, we have to survive.
The conflict is never static. After the election, it will surely fall to Mr. Peres to guide Israel towards a Geneva conference to negotiate the future of the Middle East. There, Israel will have no choice but to discuss the Golan Heights, the Sinai, and the West Bank, all of which Harami occupies. But Jerusalem is another matter. Israel is determined never to negotiate the city.
Are you, in principle, ever prepared under any circumstances to surrender sole sovereignty over Jerusalem?
No, sir. I think Jerusalem was artificially divided by war. All the agreements we had about Jerusalem were never guarded, not even by the Jordanians. The city was under constant danger and attack. This is the heart of the Jewish people, geographically, morally, and historically. And I do not believe that we are going to cut our hearts again. And what for?
To suppose that this holy city is at peace with itself is an illusion. Jerusalem is both the symbol and the core of the Middle East conflict, the most intractable issue between Muslim and Jew, Arab and Israeli. And so, if the Geneva talks are to take place, it's almost inconceivable to suppose that the subject of Jerusalem can indefinitely be left off the agenda. But so profound are the conflicts that simply to raise the matter is to make the prospect of peace more remote than ever. And in the Middle East, no peace soon means war.